Hello everybody, Larry Young here again with another segment of OLaMan Living Life with Purity. And today I want to talk about the price of hypocrisy and how it can show itself in different ways. So I'll start off with an interview that was done on a podcast this week with Katie Couric. And Katie Couric had John Fetterman on, the senator from Pennsylvania. And in the course of their discussion, Katie Couric tried 3 times to get John Fetterman to basically call Charlie Kirk a terrible influence, a misinformation artist, and these types of things, and basically trying to put it upon Charlie Kirk that he basically caused his own death. And it didn't go well for her because Fetterman, actually being more wise than more people had given him credit for, he rebuked her 3 times right in a row. And he took the common sense approach saying, a man with children was killed. We can't be bringing ourselves to killing each other just because you disagree with them. And Katie Couric, was like, well, there's exceptions. And he's like, no, this is how it is. You can't be doing these types of things. Well, Katie Couric is trying to get Fetterman to basically bend the knee to the woke ideology, and he's just not going to go there. I think the man needs a red hoodie these days. I think it'd be probably good for somebody to come up with a nice red hoodie for the man for a Christmas present, and maybe he would be thinking about maybe switching parties. That would really cause a lot of problem. That would certainly get him primaried next time, but I think he might be able to resist it. But when she couldn't get him on the Charlie Kirk angle, she went after the Epstein angle, thinking that there's all this credibility problem in the White House and these emails and things like this, and Trump is dirty, he's a pedophile, and all this other stuff. Fetterman didn't go there. But what surfaced, though, immediately after that interview was something I had kind of remembered from years ago. Katie Couric had bragged to the CNN host back then that she was on a program with him, and she was telling him how excited she was and how neat it was that she went to a party at Jeffrey Epstein's house where Prince Andrew was. Cat's out of the bag. This party took place at Jeffrey Epstein's house about a week after he'd been convicted of predatory practices in Florida. So something to do with some sexual deviancy thing or whatever. Anyway, he got popped for that one. And she went to this guy's house afterward to go to this Hollywood type party so she could, be around these folks and all like that and then brag about it. But all the time she was dismissing this, sex stuff because Epstein was a Democrat and was part of that crew. The Clinton group, all this stuff, these elitists, all the people that Katie Couric wanted to be a part of. So when she started attacking Epstein afterward and trying to make him out to be this, bad guy, and Trump was associated with him, the hypocrisy just rang so strongly, like the bells of heaven all let off. I mean, what a hypocrite. So she's going to have to deal with this. I hope that the media and the other podcasters out there don't give her a pass, because this woman is really messed up and she needs to be held accountable for this. So I don't think it's going to go too well for Miss Katie Couric here. So that's one cost of hypocrisy. So credibility is going to be lost, and she may or may not care. I don't know. It's not my ass she has to cover. So the second form of the cost of hypocrisy took place this morning, and this one was kind of funny. I went out to breakfast. I was joining another friend of mine, and we sat down at a table where there was a group of law enforcement officers from around the county, some of the sheriff's department, some of the local police, Everyone was sitting around having their coffee and eggs. So we sat down with the guys there at the main table, and a group of women came in from the local parish, and I knew these ladies, and I knew that a couple of them were just real problem Catholics, feminazis, if you will. You know what I'm talking about. And they sat down there, and I saw that one woman had a No Kings button on, a big No Kings button. And she looked over at me and was trying to mock me a little bit. Well, haven't seen you around. Haven't seen you're not up at the center anymore. What happened there? And I said, well, I said, everything comes to an end sometimes. I said, I moved on. You should too. And I said, did you go to the rally? Then she goes, oh, yeah, we were all out there. We got to get this guy gone. You know what I'm talking about. We can't have kings, And I said, who's the king? She says, well, Trump. And I said, how? And then she goes, well, he's killing people. He's making them disappear. He's, killing gay people and trans. They're just all disappearing. No one's got any responsibility here. It's all because he's a king and he's telling them to do it. And I said, do you have evidence of that? I said, I haven't seen anything about that. She goes, oh, it's all over the place. You're just not looking for it. And I said, oh, okay. I said, let me ask you something. Do you feel that you're in good standing and communion with the Catholic Church? She goes, well, of course I am. And I said, oh, okay. Well, it's just a question. I said, you follow the authority or the direction of your priest, the local bishop, the archbishops, the cardinals, and the Pope? And she goes, of course. And I said, okay. She goes, what are you getting at? I said, would you like to make a little friendly wager? And she goes, what are you supposing? And I said, I'll tell you what, let's trade breakfast checks. I said, I'll pay for your table, but you pay for my table if I win. She goes, well, you got more guys sitting at your table. I said, yep. And I said, but you're so sure about your point. I said, it shouldn't be a problem. I said, you want to turn down a free breakfast? And she goes, well, what are you wagering? And I said, let's get two people to fact check something here. And I said, and since you're against kings and you say you will not follow the directions or orders of a king, I said, let's put that to the test. Are you certain about that? And she goes, of course. And I said, okay. I said, look up the Pope and the Vatican and ask if it's a monarchy and if the Pope is a king. And so everyone around, they looked it all up, and it came back that the Pope is an authoritarian monarchy. It's one of like 7 or 8 in the entire world. And it's right there with the Saudis and all like that. So is the Vatican. So the Vatican is an authoritarian monarchy, and the Pope is the monarch or king. Well, they didn't like the outcome on it, and she started, basically, trying to get out of the deal. And I said, oh, no. So I used the peer pressure of the rest of the room against them. I said, you said that you would trade bills. I said, so we're going to give you our breakfast bill, and you're going to pay it. And they tried getting out on it. I said, nope, you're paying this. And they paid the $143.80 plus tip. And then they just looked at me like I was the devil himself. I just laughed. The price of hypocrisy today for this woman was $143.80 plus tip. I hope she left at least a 20% tip. I don't want the staff there thinking I'm cheap. In the meantime, I love you, and I'll be back.